Whether a data story project is big or small, you're going to want to follow a structured process. This helps you improve your skills with each project, manage the individual pieces of the project and the people involved, and create an auditable trail for yourself as you work through the project. This lecture provides an overview of the data storytelling process we generally follow. We do a lot of data and AI work, so we tend to get our hands dirty, technically. And we're also finding we're doing more content production, such as video production for YouTube or TikTok. We'll also walk through each part of the process in this lecture, giving you more detail on what each step in the process entails. By the end of the lecture, you'll have an understanding of our data storytelling process and will be ready to apply these learnings to your own data story projects.
Our focus on data storytelling is different from other practitioners. This is for two main reasons. One, we draw on our skill set and experience, data, AI, and media production. And two, we really enjoy working with our community and customers in the following areas: an evolving media environment that's witnessing the growth of independent journalists, for example, data, sports, and investigative journalists, and social content creators, for example, YouTube, TikTokers, etc. A space where data storytelling is ever more pervasive, but requires a broader set of technical skills. For example, data skills, machine learning and AI, content production, and so on. A global community that's motivated to upskill their tradecraft in technical and content production areas. By focusing on data, AI, and media production within the above, we've managed to create a process from our projects. These projects have varied in size and scope, but the process has remained largely similar. In smaller projects, some of the steps are less complex, lighter, and in some cases, not needed. But in larger projects, we usually see all these steps come together, along with the need to manage them within a globally distributed team. In short, the process scales up or down depending on the project. Our process comprises multiple steps. We have generally found a linearity to the process. However, you will at times backtrack or revisit other steps as you build out your data story. For example, you may find that you start with a goal and hypothesis at the beginning of your data story project, but as you do more research, collect and analyze more data, and consult with more experts, your hypothesis and goals shift. What's also useful to call out is that our data story projects tend to be broader than storytelling through a single visualization. That is, we've managed and implemented a variety of projects. Examples of our projects are as follows. Visualizations within presentations, where the visualization needs to represent the data story. Online articles, where multiple visualizations are represented within a text-based narrative. Short videos, where the data story is told through stitching together a video-based narrative with compelling analytics. If you compare the above projects, the visualization within business presentations is on the smaller side. However, the short videos require more time and effort, with a broader set of tools and skills required to produce compelling videos. No single project is created equally. You'll find different challenges across all of your projects, which may require more time in specific areas. That said, here's a comparative example of two different-sized projects. The one on the left is a smaller project. Think business or marketing presentation using 2 to 3 visualizations to tell the story. You can see that there are certain parts of the process that you may scale down or even skip. Conversely, the larger project, think political video with a distributed team, would require certain steps to scale up and multiple handoffs across the team. So there's a greater project management need for this larger-sized project. We think about each step as being able to live independently but integrating with other steps in the process. This is for 2 key reasons. You can focus on the specific elements required in a single step without losing yourself in the overall project. If you have a team, you can naturally break out the steps into a workflow, drive specific skills for that team in those areas, and run the steps in parallel. Also, while this process works for us, you may want or need to expand or change certain parts of the process. We encourage you to do this. Think of the process as a guideline to build and deploy your data story. At this stage, you select a topic, define a goal for the data story, identify sources, and define an early hypothesis. We look for related materials and research sources, experts who may be able to help inform our thinking, and generally anything that can help shape our thinking and balance our biases. This is where you create an initial story frame, structure, and plot. Think about characters, for example, antagonist, protagonist, etc., and decide on a medium or platform on which you'll publish the data story. You'll likely come back to the story conceptualization up until you complete your data analysis. As you research, source, and analyze more data and sources, you'll shift your frame for the data story and deepen your understanding of the problem space. At this step, you source or collect your data, explore it at a high level, look for high-level patterns and trends, and revisit your hypothesis, and update the story conceptualization if needed. We have some standard analytical practices here that are light. For example, create pivot tables and quickly explore the data, but begin to give us hints about whether our hypothesis will prove out or discover parts of the story that we didn't think about. We leave the analytical heavy lifting to the data analysis phase. This step is where you'll shift more into a technical process. That is, here you create a copy of the dataset, clean, transform, and normalize the data, and make sure it's prepared for analysis. Through the data discovery process, you'll likely exit that step with an understanding of your data sources, what subset of the data source is useful for your data story, and the type of analysis you'll need to conduct. Knowing these will shape the data transformation process. For example, transforming text-based ordinal data into number-based categories or numerical Likert scales. Here is where you summarize the data with descriptive statistics, conduct an exploratory data analysis, EDA, and look for inferences, deeper patterns, trends, and outliers. We've seen customers move really quickly through this process, but this is where you want to slow down. Be sure your analysis approach and results are correct, especially for what you're trying to do. This means selecting the right statistical method and tools for your analysis. We also recommend some manner of triangulation, so you don't just run the analysis once and call it a day. Cross-validate the analysis, so your story holds up to scrutiny from your audience. Here is where you might need specific technical and statistical skills. At this step, you prepare data for modeling, decide on the appropriate algorithm and approach, and implement predictive modeling using machine learning, AI, or other techniques. You may find this step is optional for your project. That is, a summary may be enough for your data story. That said, predictive models and approaches are getting much better and accurate. So having both a summary analysis or exploratory data analysis, which looks back historically, and a predictive forecast, which looks forward, gives your data story the flexibility to assert claims like, it's a problem now and will continue to be a problem in the future. If you've done an exhaustive analysis and even done some predictive modeling, you'll have lots of numbers, statistics, and metrics to potentially use. So at this step, you derive meaningful results from analyses and modeling, create a flow across them, and state in the form of an analytic or metric. You should be thinking about what can carry your story, what could be represented at a high level statistically but have deep implications, and what metrics or analytics would be impactful for the story and to your audience. This is where you move from the analysis phase into visualizing the data. You may decide to use a tool, for example, Power BI or Tableau, a framework, for example, HighCharts, D3, etc., or a programming language, for example, R, HTML, CSS, or Python. Either way, at this step, you sketch out and create visualizations for the analytics and metrics, format them towards best practices, and implement them using the appropriate tool, framework, or programming language. Here again, you may find yourself requiring specialty skills. Note that there are a ton of great resources out there on this step: books, YouTube videos, courses, and so on. If you only need a single visualization, this step might be lighter for you. However, if you're creating an online article or a YouTube video, then this step will entail more time and effort. That said, at this step, you write or create the story for your medium or platform, integrate the visualizations into the data story, and review with peers and experts to get feedback. This step can be time-consuming as you iterate on the content to get to your final data story. Again, take the time to iterate and get it right. The more you iterate, the more your data story will come off as well-written and produced, thoughtful, and not something that looks like it's been created by ChatGPT. This is where you deploy the data story to your chosen medium or platform, test for quality, and use that content within your social marketing campaign, if needed. If you can, review and test your content in a non-production or private environment. Make sure the story flows, links work, and so on. If you're a journalist or content creator, then you're likely trying to create an audience. To understand what resonates with your audience, take advantage of the analytics available to you from your chosen platforms. So at this stage, establish engagement goals for the data story. For example, impressions, views, click-through, etc. Track consumption of data story over time and pull data on engagement. For example, device, demographics, etc. Also, be sure to separate unique views and impressions from total views and impressions and try to understand where your main audience is. This will help you tailor follow-on data stories, themes, and so on. This is another step that we see customers skip, but we recommend even taking an hour for yourself or with your team to conduct a retrospective, sometimes called a project look-back or post-mortem. In this step, you collect analytics and feedback, review with peers and experts, and note where you can improve on the next data story. During this process, we ask ourselves questions like, what went well? What didn't work? What was the explicit and text-based feedback? And can we optimize our process for similar projects? Another reason to do a retrospective is to thank the team. Data stories can explore very tough and difficult topics, or just take a lot of time to get right. So take the time to celebrate the project and the team. Now that you have a high-level understanding of each of the steps, here are some example skills you or your team might need across each of the above steps. Rather than going through each row, feel free to pause the video and read through them. It's worth reinforcing here that if you're a solopreneur and wanting to go it alone, don't be overwhelmed by the skills listed out in this slide. There are smart ways to scale and get projects done. Here's a sampling of different strategies to contemplate. Understand and write down your core strengths. Write down the skills needed for your project. Identify steps that you could do versus steps where you could outsource. Scope your data story projects closer to your skill set, and then for each new data story project, add a new element for you to learn. So over the course of 5 to 10 projects, you grow your core skills. Create a small team of like-minded, passionate people whose skills fit the needs of a data story project. Then create a plan for the data story project, assigning certain aspects of the project to those with the appropriate skills. Become an expert in a single type of data story and stick with it. For example, infographics, which are a specific type of data story that require a combination of analytical and design skills. These are just a few sample strategies. You'll find your needs may shift depending on whether you're operating solo, if you have a team, if the project is part of a formal news or sports organization, and of course, the size and scope of the project.